Hark, how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. You know that tune. It is the soundtrack of the holiday season. You hear it in Home Alone as Kevin McAllister runs through the snow. You hear it in every shopping mall from New York to Sacramento. You hear it played by orchestras, sung by choirs, and even shredded on electric guitars. It is the sound of an American Christmas. But pull your chair closer to the fire, friends. Pour yourself a hot cup of coffee, because today I have a confession to make. Everything you think you know about this song is, well, an illusion. What if I told you that this song has absolutely nothing to do with bells? What if I told you it has nothing to do with Christmas? And originally, it didn't even have anything to do with America. The story of this song is not a fairy tale about elves and reindeer. It is a real-life thriller. It involves a secret diplomatic mission during a bloody war. It involves a choir sent to fight for their country's freedom with nothing but their voices. And sadly, it involves a cold-blooded murder of a genius by a secret police agent. Tonight, on Storytime Brain Prime, we are going to peel back the layers of history. We are traveling back to 1916, to a world on fire, to meet a swallow, a choir, and a man named Mykola Leontovych. I'm Pop Pop. Welcome to our family gathering. Let's start at the very beginning. And when I say beginning, I don't mean 1916. I mean centuries ago. Long before skyscrapers, before the radio, even before Christianity arrived in Eastern Europe, the people of Ukraine lived by the cycles of nature. For them, the new year didn't start in the dead of winter on January 1st. It started in the spring, when the earth woke up from its frozen sleep. They had ancient chants called Shchedryk, songs of generosity and abundance. They believed that singing these songs would bring a good harvest. And the most famous of these chants was not about bells. It was about a little bird, a swallow. In the original Ukrainian language, the song is called Shchedryk. The lyrics tell a simple, beautiful story. A swallow flies into a master's house. It twitters and chirps, telling the farmer, come out, master. Look at your sheep. They have borne lambs. Your livestock is healthy. Your wife is beautiful. You will have a mountain of gold and a prosperous year." It was a song of pure optimism, a magical spell for happiness. Now, imagine the music itself. 4 notes, just 4. Mi, fa, mi, re. Over and over again. In music theory, we call this an ostinato. It is hypnotic. It represents the endless cycle of life. So, how did a simple folk chant about a spring bird become the most complex piece of choral music in the world? For that, we need to meet the architect of this masterpiece. Enter Mykola Leontovych. He was not a rich celebrity. He was a humble music teacher, a conductor, and a man of deep faith. He lived in Kiev in a time when the Russian Empire tried to suppress Ukrainian culture. Leontovych was a musical jeweler. He didn't just write songs, he polished them like diamonds. He took that simple 4-note folk melody and worked on it for years. Literally, years. He wrote one version, then he threw it away. He wrote a second, a third. He was looking for perfection. He wanted to take the simple voice of the swallow and turn it into a magnificent cathedral of sound. He layered the voices, sopranos, altos, tenors, basses, weaving them together until they sounded like a single living organism. Finally, in 1916, he was ready. The choir of Kiev University performed Shchedryk for the very first time. It was a triumph. The audience in Kiev was mesmerized. They realized that this wasn't just a folk song anymore. It was high art. But while the music was beautiful, the world around Leontovych was falling apart. World War I was raging, empires were collapsing, and from the ashes, a new nation was trying to be born, the Ukrainian National Republic. This brings us to 1919. This is the part of history they rarely teach in American schools. Ukraine had declared its independence, but it was under attack from all sides, especially from the Bolsheviks and the Russian imperial forces. The young republic was fighting for its life. They needed weapons, yes, but they also needed something else. They needed the world to know they existed. Europeans at that time thought Ukraine was just a part of Russia. They didn't know it had its own language, its own soul, its own music. So, the leader of Ukraine, Simon Petliura, had a brilliant, unconventional idea. He decided to send an army to the west, but not soldiers with rifles. He sent an army of singers. He created the Ukrainian Republican Capella, a choir of the best voices in the land, led by the legendary conductor Alexander Koshitz. Their orders were simple but incredibly heavy. Go to Europe, go to America, sing our songs, show them that we are a separate nation, win their hearts. And so the tour began. It was a tour that would span over 1,000 concerts, and everywhere they went, they didn't just perform, they conquered. Let's look at the newspapers from that time. It is incredible to read what the critics wrote. The choir traveled to Czechoslovakia first. A famous Czech conductor, Jaroslav Křička, was skeptical at first, but after hearing them, he wrote, "The Ukrainians came and conquered. I think we have deeply wronged these people by unconsciously grouping them together with the Russian people. They are unique." Then they went to Austria. The critics there noted a sharp difference in the national character. They wrote that while Russian art was often filled with great sadness, Ukrainian art was filled with joy, optimism, and life. In Belgium, the reaction was even more emotional. The audience was so moved by the power of the music that they stood up and shouted, "Slava Ukraini," which means "Glory to Ukraine." Can you imagine? Belgian citizens shouting Ukrainian slogans in 1919 because of a song. Then came France, the cultural capital of the world. In Paris, the audience gave a standing ovation just for the anthem. A professor from the Sorbonne University, Charles Senyobos, wrote an open letter to the conductor. Listen to these powerful words. He said, "No propaganda could be more effective for the recognition of the Ukrainian nation than this music." And in Germany, the press gave perhaps the highest compliment of all. They wrote, "If song were a state, Ukraine would take first place in the world." The swallow was flying high. The mission was working. But back home, a dark shadow was approaching. While the choir was being applauded in the grand halls of Paris and London, the composer, Mykola Leontovych, was living in poverty and fear. The Soviet regime was taking control. They hated anyone who promoted independent Ukrainian culture. Leontovych, with his beautiful music that glorified Ukrainian traditions, was a target. The story of his death is like a scene from a noir movie. It was January 23, 1921, a cold winter night. Leontovych was staying at his parents' house in a village. A stranger knocked on the door. He introduced himself as Afanasy Hryshchenko, an agent of the Cheka, the Soviet secret police. He said he was traveling on business and asked for a place to sleep for the night. Leontovych, being a kind man, let him in. They shared dinner. They talked. The family went to sleep. In the early morning, a loud noise woke the house. The stranger, the Chekist agent, had pulled out a rifle. He shot the composer in his sleep. Leontovych died instantly. The agent robbed the house and fled into the snow. It was a brutal political assassination. The Soviets wanted to silence the voice of Ukraine. They thought that by killing the composer, they could kill the spirit of the nation. But they were wrong. They could kill the man, but they could not kill the music. The music was already across the ocean, safe and ready to be reborn. On October 5, 1922, more than a year after Leontovych's murder, the Ukrainian choir arrived in New York City. They stepped onto the stage of Carnegie Hall. The American audience had no idea about the tragedy back in Kyiv. They didn't know about the murder. They just heard the music. When the choir sang Shchedryk, the hall erupted. It was an instant sensation. The New York Times and other papers raved about it. But for more than a decade, it remained a beautiful, foreign curiosity. Americans loved the melody, but they couldn't pronounce the words. Shchedryk was too hard to say. Then came 1936. The Great Depression was ending, and radio was king. Peter Wilhowsky, an American choral director with Ukrainian roots, was working for NBC Radio. He needed a song that would grab listeners' attention. He remembered that haunting four-note melody. He sat down and listened. Mi, fa, mi, re. To his American ears, it didn't sound like a swallow twittering. It sounded like bells ringing in the distance. Ding, dong, ding, dong. So he made a decision that changed pop culture forever. He didn't translate the song. He completely rewrote it. He removed the spring, the swallow, and the sheep. He added silver bells, Christmas cheer, and a message of holiday joy. He broadcasted his new version, Carol of the Bells, to millions of households. And the rest is history. Today, Carol of the Bells is sung by everyone, from church choirs to heavy metal bands, from NBA commercials to the Muppets. But now, my friends, you know the truth. You know that behind those ding-dongs lies the spirit of a little swallow wishing you prosperity. You know that behind the holiday cheer lies a diplomatic fight for freedom. And you know that behind the genius of the music lies the tragic memory of Mykola Leontovych. Recently, there has been a movement to recognize Shchedryk by UNESCO as a part of the spiritual heritage of humanity. And I think, after hearing this story, you will agree that it deserves that honor. It is a song that proved that beauty is stronger than bullets. All right, folks, take a deep breath. That was a heavy story, but an important one. Now, let's see how sharp your memory is today with our Brain Prime quiz. Question number 1. Before it was about bells, the original Ukrainian song was about a specific bird. Which bird was it? A, a robin, B, a swallow, C, an eagle? The answer is B, a swallow. It symbolized the coming of spring. Question number 2. In 1919, the Ukrainian choir toured Europe. In which country did the audience shout Slava Ukraini after the concert? A, France, B, Germany, C, Belgium. The answer is C, Belgium. The music moved them to shout for Ukrainian glory. Question number 3. The composer, Mykola Leontovych, was tragically killed in 1921. Who was his killer? A, a jealous musician, B, a Soviet secret agent, Chekist, C, a robber from the village. The answer is B. He was assassinated by a Chekist agent named Shchedryk. How did you do? Let me know in the comments. And tell me, will you ever listen to Carol of the Bells the same way again? Thank you for letting me share this piece of history with you. It's a story close to my heart. If you learned something new, please like this video and subscribe to our family here at Storytime Brain Prime. Merry Christmas, and may your year be as bountiful as the swallow promised.